Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.
Have you finished building the summer house? Bring the keys quickly. I've sold the house and have nowhere to live, the mother-in-law announced from the doorstep. But upon hearing her daughter-in-law's words, is it possible to change so much at 30 that even close friends and family no longer recognize you? Yes. Easily. If a person finds themselves in a desperate or challenging situation, they are capable of more than one might think. Violetta had been a calm, non-confrontational, and very kind girl since childhood. All the stray cats and dogs were her constant companions. She fed them, watered them, found them good homes, and cared for them as best as she could. Her parents tried to fight against this, but eventually gave up. They were convinced that Violetta would become a veterinarian after school. She loved animals so much. But surprisingly, Violetta chose a completely different profession and became a pastry chef. She loved cooking, especially working with dough and sweets, so she decided to dedicate herself to this field. After graduation, Violetta got a job at a very good restaurant with its own bakery and worked there as an assistant. She enjoyed the work and spent a lot of time at the restaurant, also attending various workshops by renowned pastry chefs. One day, her manager fell ill, and she had to take his place. There hadn't been an opportunity before to show her creativity and skill, so Violetta decided that this was the perfect chance to take a risk and create something new, something special, something of her own. The result was completely unexpected. Someone informed the head chef, and Violetta was immediately fired without even a chance to explain herself. She left the restaurant and walked with her head down. It was very upsetting to lose such a job. But there was no turning back. This was one of those cases where initiative is punishable. Lost in thought, Violetta didn't notice the red traffic light and stepped into the road right in front of a car's bumper. The driver slammed on the brakes, but still clipped Violetta, and she fell onto the asphalt in front of the car's wheels. The frightened young man jumped out of the car and rushed to Violetta. "Miss, are you okay?" "I think so," Violetta said calmly, still not understanding what had happened. "Why would you step into the path of a car?" "You need to look around," the young man scolded her. "I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. It's just been one of those days, I was lost in thought," Violetta explained. The young man saw that she was a bit disoriented and decided that leaving her in such a state on the street would be inhumane. "All right, let's forget about it. The main thing is that you're okay. Do you need medical assistance? Let me take you to a doctor." "No, it's not necessary, really." "All right, get in my car, I'll at least give you a ride home." Violetta slowly walked to the car and silently took the front seat. "What's your name?" the young man asked. "Violetta." "I'm Victor. It might be inappropriate to say this given the situation, but it's nice to meet you." Violetta replied indifferently and stared out the window. "Where should I go?" "Please give me your address." Violetta gave him the address and didn't say another word. When they arrived at the house, Victor couldn't hold back and asked, "This is none of my business, but what happened that you seem so down? Maybe I can help in some way?" Violetta looked at him with the same indifference. "What happened?" She repeated. "I lost the job I had dreamed of because of my own foolishness. Do you understand?" "Partially," Victor admitted honestly. "What kind of job was it that you're willing to throw yourself into the road over?" "I wasn't planning to throw myself. I was really just lost in thought. You see, I'm a pastry chef's assistant, working in a restaurant." She said the name and saw the surprise on Victor's face. "Yes, that restaurant. I worked so hard to get there, and then my manager fell ill, and I had a chance to show what I could do. Instead of making the agreed-upon dishes, I made something of my own, something completely new. And I got fired. What's wrong with making your own dish?" Victor didn't understand. "Is it such a terrible crime? So you experimented and wanted to show your skills. Why fire you immediately?" The thing is, someone called my direct boss and reported me, you see? And then the boss called the management and said to punish me for unauthorized actions. Ah, that's what happened. I understand now. He was afraid of competition, that you might outshine him, so he decided to deal with it decisively. Now the issue is clear. But don't be upset. Why be in a team where people stab you in the back? Easy for you to say, don't be upset. But what am I supposed to do? You know, I can help you, Victor smiled. The thing is, my friend is opening a patisserie and is looking for a talented pastry chef. Would you like to meet him and show what you can do? Maybe he'll like you and make you an offer. It's not a prestigious restaurant, but who knows, maybe this cafe will become well known in the city in the future. Violetta's eyes lit up. Really? Will you give me his number? Really, why not? Victor smiled. I have another suggestion. Let's meet this evening and go to Silvio together. I'll introduce you. You can chat and decide. Deal. Thank you so much. It seems it wasn't by chance that I ended up in front of your car. No problem. See you this evening then. I'll pick you up at 7. Right here. All right. I'll be waiting. Violetta got out of the car and briskly entered her building. Victor watched her with surprise. What an amazing girl. Just half an hour ago, she was so distressed, and now she's glowing, he thought, smiling. Exactly at 7 o'clock, Violetta was standing by the entrance and waiting for Victor. He was 2 minutes late, which was understandable given the traffic at that time of day. Violetta approached the car and took the front seat. Victor noticed how the girl had prepared for the interview with the potential employer. She wore a strict turquoise pantsuit without a blouse, stiletto heels, and had her hair styled neatly. Victor smiled, and Violetta noticed. Why are you smiling? The girl blushed. You look like you should be going to an interview for an executive or manager position, not a patisserie. I love the strict classic style. Especially pantsuits, the girl admitted. Do you think my outfit is inappropriate? Not at all. It's quite suitable. And you look very beautiful in it, Victor blushed. He wasn't good at giving compliments and was very shy, but he couldn't help but give one in this situation. Violetta truly looked stunning. Victor's friend, Silvio, turned out to be a very cheerful and sociable guy. Violetta showed her portfolio, and he was thrilled to have a young and talented pastry chef on his team. Will you be able to manage all the staff? Silvio asked. Do you have any experience? Just a little, a few days, but I'll learn quickly. Don't worry, Violetta assured him. In the end, they decided to give it a try. The opening was planned for 2 weeks later. They needed to discuss the menu and other details. They agreed that Violetta would come by tomorrow morning at 10. Victor suggested they take a little walk. It was still early, and the weather was incredibly warm for early October. They went to the waterfront, bringing coffee and croissants. Violetta liked this guy. He felt like someone she had known for a long time. Plus, Victor was well-mannered and educated, which was very attractive to her. Then things moved quickly. The cafe opened, they went on dates almost every evening, took trips, and went on outings. Violetta suddenly realized she had fallen in love. Seriously and forever. Victor was very romantic, giving her flowers, little romantic gestures, and surprises. This went on for over a month. One morning, Violetta woke up feeling unwell. Her head was spinning, and she felt nauseous. What could I have eaten? The girl wondered. After going through everything she had eaten the previous day, Violetta realized it couldn't be food poisoning and decided to take a pregnancy test. It turned out to be positive. That evening, she told Victor. Really, we're going to have a baby? Victor exclaimed happily. Do you want a baby? Violetta asked, uncertain. Of course, a baby from my beloved girlfriend, what could be better? What's wrong, Violetta? Of course, we'll have the baby, Victor chattered, so we need to introduce you to my mom right away. Oh, I'm scared, Violetta immediately started to refuse. Come on, now. You still need to meet your future mother-in-law. And by the way, I need to meet your father and ask for your hand. My dad is a good man, you'll definitely like him, Violetta said calmly. My mom is a wonderful woman. You can't find anyone like her these days. She'll like you too, don't worry, Victor reassured his beloved. Listen, let's make it simpler. Let's book a table at a restaurant and introduce everyone at once. How do you feel about that? Sounds great. It will be easier for me to meet my future mother-in-law for the first time this way. The meeting was set for the upcoming Saturday. Sergio Delgado, Violetta's father, didn't quite understand the need for going to a restaurant. He didn't like dining out and always preferred home-cooked meals. Daddy, please, just this once. It's really important, Violetta pleaded with her father. You'll understand everything there. All right, but only for you, her father smiled. He loved his only daughter dearly and was willing to do a lot to ensure she was happy and content. Violetta's mother had passed away when she was 11, and since then, they had been living alone together. Her father had never considered bringing another woman into the house. Yes, he had dated women, of course, but he had never taken anyone seriously. After 15 years of such a life, he was used to managing household chores and raising his daughter on his own. And Violetta had successfully helped around the house and in the kitchen. Violetta and her father arrived at the restaurant a bit late. Victor and his mother were already seated at the table. The introduction went smoothly and pleasantly. Victor's mother, Sandra Blanco, despite her outward strictness, turned out to be a very pleasant woman. They got along well with Violetta's father, reminiscing about the past and their youth. The children's decision to marry was met with joy, and they promised to help with the wedding preparations. They decided not to tell the parents about Violetta's pregnancy just yet, so they wouldn't think the couple was marrying solely for that reason. They decided not to delay the wedding, and the next day they chose an unusual date, 12.12. Violetta was happy. She was working hard to prepare for the most important day of her life. The dress was ordered, the restaurant was booked, and the photographer and videographer were paid. With just over a week left before the wedding, the excitement was building. The next day, Violetta had a bachelorette party planned. Although calling it a bachelorette party was a stretch, she had arranged to spend the evening at a cafe with her only friend, Sabina, to chat and catch up. Victor said he and Silvio would join the girls later. He also thought it was a pointless event and suggested they celebrate the bachelorette and bachelor parties together as one group. Violetta was pleased with Victor's approach. The girls arrived at the restaurant around 7. They wanted to have a little time alone to chat about this and that. The guys were supposed to arrive by 8. Violetta and Victor planned to introduce Silvio to Sabina since both were single and they thought they would make a good couple together. By 9 o'clock, Victor still hadn't arrived and hadn't called. Violetta began to worry. He's never been this late before, the girl was anxious. Stop it, he might have just been delayed somewhere, Sabina tried to calm her friend. Why are you stressing out? Call him yourself and ask when they're coming. Despite her attempts to reassure her friend, Sabina was also very worried. Violetta had warned her that Victor's friend, who was also single, would be there. Violetta dialed the familiar number, but no one answered. Then she called Silvio. Also silence. This was extremely strange. Maybe they've already arrived and are just not picking up, Sabina suggested. Then he would have just hung up. Besides, he knows I shouldn't be stressed. He wouldn't do that, Violetta reasoned. Stop making things up, everything will be fine, Sabina said, but with each passing minute, she believed it less. Her intuition told her that something was wrong. Victor couldn't just ignore calls from his pregnant fiancée. It was already 9:30. Violetta's nerves were giving out. She decided to call her future mother-in-law. Luckily, she had saved her number. There were ringing tones, but no one answered. What's going on? Why isn't anyone picking up? Violetta almost cried. And suddenly her phone rang. It was her father. She didn't really want to answer him at the moment to avoid explaining her voice, but she knew that if she didn't, her father would start worrying about why his daughter wasn't picking up. So Violetta tried to answer as calmly as possible. Yes, Daddy, what happened? She asked almost cheerfully. Violetta, where are you right now? Her father asked, unusually softly and sweetly. For some reason, Violetta didn't like the sound of her father's voice. We're at the restaurant, everything's fine. We're sitting with some friends, celebrating, Violetta lied to avoid worrying her father. Sorry, which friends? Her father asked. Well, with Victor and Silvio, Violetta lied again. My daughter, that's not possible. Victor had an accident half an hour ago. He's no longer with us, her father pronounced the sentence. No. A scream echoed through the restaurant. Violetta woke up in the hospital. Someone had called an ambulance after she lost consciousness in the restaurant. Her father was sitting next to her, holding her hand. Where am I? Violetta asked faintly. You're in the hospital, my daughter, her father replied, and Violetta noticed tears in his eyes. And Victor? Violetta asked hopefully, thinking it was all a dream. He didn't die, did he? Tell me he didn't die. She was starting to have a panic attack, and her father called the nurse. Violetta was given a sedative again, and she fell asleep. Violetta began to recover somewhat only after a week. During this time, she was given sedatives and vitamins to support her body. Naturally, Violetta missed Victor's funeral, and her father was very concerned about it. When my daughter starts coming to her senses and realizes she wasn't able to say goodbye to her loved one, there will be a new crisis. But Violetta began to react calmly to everything. Whether it was the effect of the medications or her brain had blocked the grief and was in some kind of daze, doctors also started worrying about Violetta's emotional and mental state. A month passed, and Violetta was indeed getting better. But then a new and very serious problem arose. The doctors did not recommend continuing the pregnancy, as Violetta had been given too many medications during this period. They didn't know about the pregnancy at first, and by the time they found out, it was too late. At such an early stage, during the formation of all the baby's organs, this could lead to consequences. But Violetta didn't want to hear any of it. I will give birth. You won't convince me to get rid of the baby. This is Victor's child, and I will keep it. End of discussion, she insisted to the doctors. I understand you, the doctor tried to convince her, but you must understand, there is a very high risk of developing diseases in the fetus. If the baby is born sick, what will you do then? Suffer all your life and make him suffer? But no arguments or reasoning had any effect on Violetta. Her father also tried to persuade her to terminate the pregnancy, but she wouldn't listen to him either. In the end, she kept the baby. Violetta spent almost the entire pregnancy in and out of hospitals. When the time came, she gave birth to a boy and named him Raphael. That was what she and Victor had dreamed of. After being discharged from the maternity hospital, Violetta moved in with her father. She didn't want to stay in Victor's apartment. Too many things reminded her of him there. Sandra Blanco offered to let her move in with her, but Violetta refused. Sorry, I can't. You're always welcome to visit us and spend time with Raphael. We'll also visit you, but I will live with my father. Please understand, Violetta explained. Sandra Blanco understood her. They hadn't even had a chance to marry, but the mother-in-law considered Violetta her daughter-in-law, and it couldn't be otherwise. Raphael was also registered under Victor's last name. Now it was Sandra Blanco's family. She had no other relatives. The baby's health problems began to manifest when he turned 8 months old. Sandra Blanco, visiting her daughter-in-law, noticed that the baby was behaving oddly. Violetta, Have you seen a neurologist when he was 6 months old? She asked. Not yet. We haven't managed to see a good specialist. Why do you ask? I think Raphael is tilting his head in a strange way. Haven't you noticed? Don't make things up. He's fine, Violetta replied calmly. The mother-in-law looked at her daughter-in-law in surprise. Does she really not see or just not want to see, she thought. But she said something else aloud. I have an acquaintance whose daughter is a pediatric neurologist. Would you like me to talk to her and get an appointment for you? No, I'll handle it myself. Violetta, I also wanted to suggest something. Maybe I could take care of Raphael while you go back to work. It might help you distract yourself from all the thoughts, Sandra Blanco suggested. No, I want to stay with my son for now. I'll think about work when he turns 1. And Silvio called asking when I can return. Well, maybe you should think about it, suggested the mother-in-law, but Violetta was adamant. I'll be with the child until he's 1. At that time, Violetta didn't know what awaited her in the very near future. How many weeks and months she would have to spend in hospitals with her son. Violetta received the first referral for Raphael's examination just a couple of days after the conversation with her mother-in-law. Sandra Blanco had managed to schedule an appointment with the familiar neurologist. After examining the child, the doctor issued a referral to a hospital. She was concerned about the boy's condition and strongly recommended early examination to have a chance to correct the situation later. The examination results were not promising. Raphael was found to have issues with his nervous system. Violetta was in shock. She was invited to meet with the senior doctor of the department. Violetta Delgado, I need to have a serious talk with you, he began, and Violetta immediately tensed up. She understood that there was nothing good to expect from this conversation, but the phrase serious talk threw her off balance. I'm listening. Is it that bad? Violetta asked directly. Just tell me honestly, I'm already anxious. You see, your son has certain problems with his nervous system. Treatment should have started yesterday. But since the problem has only been identified now, treatment needs to begin immediately. I'll refer you to a hospital with a good neurological department for babies. But I must tell you right away, you will have to stay with your son for a long time, definitely for several months. What is his diagnosis and what causes this disease? The diagnosis won't tell you much, it's too complex. As for the cause? It's possible that you experienced some stress during pregnancy or were overly sensitive and worried about things, especially if these worries occurred during the first trimester. Such events have a very negative impact on the formation of the child's nervous system. Now we will try to address the consequences. Did you have any such worries during that period? Yes, Raphael's father, whom I was planning to marry, died. Tears welled up in Violetta's eyes, and a lump rose in her throat. She barely managed to keep from crying at that moment. He died in a car accident a week before the wedding. The doctor fell silent. He felt uncomfortable for having criticized the young mother for her worries during pregnancy when, in fact, the girl had a significant reason for stress. I'm sorry, I didn't know. That explains a lot. Does Raphael have a chance to recover? And what could be the consequences of this disease? Violetta asked, ignoring the doctor's apology. I won't lie to you, the problem is indeed serious. There is a chance, but it's small. The doctor lowered his gaze. He felt pity for the young woman who had been burdened with so much in such a short time. If untreated, your boy could develop epilepsy later. And that's a completely unpredictable disease. But if you want my opinion, I would use all available resources to maximize that small chance. I will also use every opportunity to try to help my son. Thank you. She paused and looked at the doctor, both for the advice and for your sympathy. I can see that you are sincere in your words. Then came 2 months in the hospital, followed by another month in a different one, then a rehabilitation center, and back to the hospital. It was painful for Violetta to watch. She felt her spirits sink because the procedures performed by the doctors weren't yielding the desired results. There was no improvement. This time, they were resting in a sanatorium for children with developmental issues and nervous system diseases. In their room, they shared space with a mother and her 5-year-old daughter. "Let's get to know each other," suggested the neighbor. "Unfortunately, we only have 3 days left on our voucher, but you'll be here for a while. The sanatorium is really great. It's not easy to get in." This was true. Sandra Blanco had managed to secure a voucher for Violetta and Rafael with great difficulty, using all her connections. The cost of the voucher was exorbitant, but the mother-in-law covered the expenses and never revealed the final amount, including all necessary procedures for Rafael. Violetta was very grateful to her mother-in-law. She was indeed a wonderful woman, as Victor used to say about his mother. Their relationship was excellent, with a rare respect and understanding between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. "I'm Violetta, and this is my son Rafael." "And you are?" "I'm Regina, and this is my daughter Paulina." Regina smiled. "Nice to meet you," Violetta smiled in return. "Is this your first time here?" asked the curious neighbor. "Yes, we're still very new to this, and the problems are already significant," Violetta said sadly. "Everyone here has problems," Regina noted reasonably, "but the sanatorium is really good." "What's your issue? Increased muscle tone?" Violetta looked at her neighbor in surprise. Could she really think that such a trivial issue would warrant a trip to such a place? Strange woman. "Do you seriously think I came here for increased muscle tone? My son has very serious problems. We've been in and out of hospitals for almost 6 months with breaks, but there's been no results so far. The doctors shrug their shoulders and say there's nothing they can do." "And what's the diagnosis?" Regina asked persistently. Violetta studied her, trying to decide whether it was worth sharing the diagnosis or not. Then she thought that Regina would probably not remember Rafael's diagnosis, which was difficult to pronounce, let alone remember, especially since she was a stranger. So she told her what was wrong with her son. "Oh, I know someone who can help you." "I know for sure," Regina said happily. "Don't think I'm naive or a fantasizer. My Paulina had the exact same diagnosis. But now she's more or less okay, truly." "What did you do?" Violetta asked with interest. "Please let me know. I'm willing to try anything to save my son. Let's get settled, change clothes, and take a walk in the park. There's a beautiful park here, and I'll tell you everything in detail." "Okay, thank you. Then let's meet in the lobby in half an hour." Violetta dressed her son and changed herself, called her father and mother-in-law to let them know they were settled, and, picking up Rafael, went down to the lobby. Regina and Paulina were sitting on a couch, waiting for their new neighbors. As they walked through the park, Regina explained that there was a fantastic pediatric neurologist in the capital, a miracle worker. He was the one who helped Regina's daughter. The girl had been predicted to have serious problems, even to the point of not walking. And what did this miracle doctor do? Well, I can't tell you exactly what he did because the child was taken away for procedures. She was calm and not afraid of doctors, so there were no problems. But it's true that my girl became completely different after 6 months. I pray every day for this person's health. He practically saved not only Paulina but also me." Tears welled up in Regina's eyes. "You can't imagine the despair I was in. My husband even left me. He didn't want to live with a sick daughter and urged me to send her to a home for disabled children. Can you imagine? What a nightmare. I would never give up my child, no matter what." Violetta exclaimed. "That's right, I didn't give her up. But he said he didn't want to live in such a nightmare, packed his things, and left." "Good riddance to him," Violetta commented quietly, but Regina heard. "I agree with you. I can live without him, but I won't abandon my child. And you know, I'm glad I didn't give up. Though there was a moment when I almost lost hope. Then I heard about this doctor on TV and decided to take a chance. The wait for an appointment is several months, but it was worth it waiting for your turn. Can you give me his contact information? Violetta asked. Of course, I have his personal mobile number. We're under his care for another year. It's a severe case, so I can call him in case of urgent need. And I consider your case to be urgent, Regina said, winking at Violetta. Violetta smiled, looking at this woman. Where does she get all this energy and positivity? To live in hospitals for so long, trying to save a child, and still maintain such cheerfulness, one must truly be skilled. Regina was already pulling out her mobile phone and calling the miracle doctor. Amazing determination. Although, without this determination, would she have saved her daughter? Violetta thought again and even felt a kind of warm envy for Regina's assertiveness. She was not like that. Pablo Gonzalez, hello. Regina started chattering. Sorry for the disturbance, this is Regina Garcia. Is it a good time to talk? The doctor was saying something, asking questions. Regina answered. And Violetta waited impatiently for her to mention Rafael, and finally, she did. Pablo Gonzalez, here's the situation. My friend's son has health issues. The doctors don't know what to do and are shrugging their shoulders. Poor Violetta has been running around trying to find a solution. Maybe you could take a look at her boy? He has the same diagnosis as ours. The doctor said something. Regina listened carefully, then began to plead. Oh, Pablo Gonzalez, thank you so much. You're the best doctor. I'll pass on everything to her. Regina thanked him and hung up. So, what did he say? Violetta asked nervously. Everything's great. You need to call him in the evening, and he will tell you exactly when he can see you. Really, that simple? I'm very grateful to you. Please give me your phone number, and if everything works out, I will definitely thank you. Oh, stop it, no need. I'm a mother too and understand how worried you are. But I'll give you my number only so you can update me on how things are going. Thank you so much. I really hope he can help us. In the evening, Violetta called the doctor. Pablo Gonzalez asked many questions about Rafael, where they had been, what treatments had been done, what medications had been taken, and scheduled an appointment for 2 weeks later at his clinic. Look, you need to make sure you come during this window. After that, I'm flying out for a 2-week conference. Then my schedule is full for the next 3 weeks. So, please try to come on that day to avoid wasting time. I will come, I'll definitely come. Thank you so much. Violetta thanked him and said goodbye. She immediately recounted the conversation with Regina and shared the appointment date. It's a pity that part of the voucher will go to waste. But it's worth it, believe me. Violetta called her father and told him about the meeting with the doctor and the upcoming trip to the capital in 2 weeks. Her father supported her decision and agreed that it was necessary to interrupt the voucher and visit the doctor if there was even a tiny chance to help Rafael. Her mother-in-law also supported Violetta and asked her not to worry about the lost part of the voucher. Violetta, dear, don't even think about it. The voucher is a minor thing. The most important thing is to help the grandson. Maybe I should come to the capital. It would be easier with the baby if we were together. Thank you, Sandra Blanco. But Rafael is already quite grown up. I'm managing. As you say, dear, as you say. But if you need anything, call me, and I'll come. I know, thank you for everything you're doing for us. There are no mother-in-laws like you left in the world, honestly. Oh, don't exaggerate, I'm actually quite difficult, Sandra Blanco blushed, though she was very pleased that her daughter-in-law appreciated her. Exactly 2 weeks later, Violetta and her son arrived in the capital directly from the sanatorium. They had to take a taxi to the clinic since Violetta was completely unfamiliar with the city. They arrived half an hour before the scheduled time. After going up to the doctor's office, Violetta waited patiently for them to be called into an office. She didn't think that Pablo Gonzalez was the head of the clinic and felt a sense of awkwardness and anxiety. About 10 minutes later, a man in his 40s entered the reception area. He was wearing a formal blue suit, neat glasses, and was carrying a briefcase. He looked at Violetta with the child, greeted everyone, and addressed the secretary. "Good afternoon, everyone. Olivia, please call them in a couple of minutes," he said in a calm but very confident voice. Such a voice is usually found in natural leaders. The secretary nodded silently, and Violetta couldn't help but ask, "Excuse me, is this Pablo Gonzalez?" "Yes." So young and already managing the clinic, Violetta was surprised. It's not surprising. This clinic belongs to his father. After his death, Pablo Gonzalez took over the management. He's a very talented doctor. He's known not only in our country but throughout Europe. The secretary glanced at the clock and continued, "Go on in. I don't know what the problem with your baby is, but if anyone can help, it's definitely our Pablo Gonzalez." "Thank you, I really hope so." Violetta entered the office holding Rafael. The doctor immediately took notice. "Can your son walk on his own?" "Yes, of course." "Then why are you carrying him?" "Just faster," it was the only explanation Violetta could come up with. "Put the boy on his feet, let him walk around the office." "How old is he?" "He'll be 2 next month." Even more so, a boy of that age should be taking care of and comforting his mother. The doctor smiled and moved away from the desk. He approached Rafael and squatted in front of him. Violetta watched in amazement as her son interacted with the stranger. He usually feared unfamiliar people and would run to his mother, but here he calmly allowed himself to be examined and did what the doctor asked. After a few minutes, it was Violetta's turn to answer Pablo Gonzalez's questions. He asked about everything, from the pregnancy to Rafael's sleep, food preferences, and any activities. No other doctor had ever asked Violetta so many questions about her child, especially such strange and unusual ones. Once he had received answers to all his questions, Pablo Gonzalez said, "So, here's the plan. I'm leaving you in the clinic for additional examination. What you've shown me is good, of course, but I like to check everything myself. Then I'll make conclusions and prescribe treatment. So, you'll be settled into a room now, and we'll start tomorrow." "Okay. And how much will it cost to stay in your clinic?" "I understand it's not cheap, but I need to know what to expect," Violetta asked. "You'll be given the cost estimate in your room. Don't worry, we'll sort it out." Violetta and Rafael were settled into a 2-bedroom, which impressed with its conditions. They had been in many rooms before, but none had such comfort. Their lunch arrived almost immediately, and it resembled more of a restaurant meal than hospital food. "How much will the treatment cost here if this is the service?" Violetta thought with horror and immediately became upset. In the evening, Violetta received a price list with initial rates, excluding the specifics of Rafael's treatment. Violetta almost fainted. The amount was certainly beyond her family's means. Violetta cried. She couldn't ask her mother-in-law for money again. She felt ashamed. Moreover, the amount was truly daunting, and it wasn't even final. Pablo Gonzalez entered the room and saw Violetta crying. "What happened?" he asked, alarmed. "Is something wrong with the child?" "No," Violetta said through her tears, "we can't afford the treatment. It's too expensive for us." "Does your husband know you're here?" "I don't have a husband. He died a week before our wedding," Violetta replied, breaking down completely. She was shaking uncontrollably and had a full-blown panic attack. Pablo Gonzalez was at a loss, unsure how to calm this young, distressed woman. The only thing that came to his mind was to hug her and pat her on the back. "Violetta, don't worry so much. We'll figure something out. We have quotas, and we can use them in such cases." He lied. They had no quotas for such illnesses. But he wanted to comfort Violetta and help in any way he could. "Really?" She looked at the doctor with hopeful eyes. "Really?" He lied again without blinking. "Thank you so much. I really don't know what to do or where to get the money. My mother-in-law is helping me, but I can't keep asking her for money. I'm ashamed." What about your parents? I only have my father, and he's already retired. My mother died a long time ago. And I have the opposite situation. Pablo Gonzalez said for some reason, my father died, and I have a complicated relationship with my mother. Actually, she's been gone for a long time. She left us when I was 8, married someone else, and had a daughter, my half-sister. She doesn't even send birthday greetings. It's like she's not there. When my father died, I called her to let her know. You know what she said? I'm not going to offer condolences, it's not a big loss. She didn't even think about me, you know? Even though she knew that my father was my only close relative. She didn't say, hang in there, son, or anything like that. She never cared about me. That's the story. How awful. I genuinely sympathize with you. And your sister? You don't keep in touch with her either? We never had that kind of relationship. Nothing to maintain. I've only seen her in photographs. She's a typical consumer living off others. I don't like such people. Yes, she's my sister, but we have nothing in common. Although my mother always lived by the same principle. Everything was about me being her favorite. He suddenly stopped and said apologetically, I don't know why I'm telling you all this now. You have enough problems without me. It's okay. Sometimes you just need to talk. It's important. Violetta touched his hand and smiled. Thank you. For what? The doctor didn't understand. For your openness and kindness. You're a very good person. And thank you for listening. Pablo Gonzalez looked at the sleeping Rafael. Don't worry about your son. I'll do everything I can to help him. And about the payment too. I'll go see how to resolve your issue. Good night. He left the room and went to his office. Violetta would never know that Pablo Gonzalez personally covered all of Rafael's treatment costs because there were no quotas or discounts in their clinic for neurosurgical cases. But he couldn't leave Violetta and her son without treatment. He couldn't because he understood that this woman had no one else to rely on. A retired father and a similarly aged mother-in-law, what could they do? But Pablo had money, and there was no special use for it. If anything, it could offer hope and save a little person from a difficult fate. Isn't that what Pablo had studied for? And wouldn't his father have acted the same way? Surely, he would have. Pablo sat in his office and looked out the window. It was already night outside, and he didn't want to go home. He thought about Violetta. He didn't understand why this young woman had touched him so deeply, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. Pablo wanted to help her with all his might. Of course, he tried to heal all his little patients, but Rafael had become a personal challenge for him. He promised himself that he would do everything possible to ensure the boy recovered and could live a full life. The next day, Rafael underwent an examination. The situation was a bit better than Pablo had expected. He told Violetta this, which undoubtedly made her happy. Look, I've outlined the treatment. I'm flying out to a conference in Munich this evening. While I'm away, Rafael will undergo all the procedures. When I return in 2 weeks, we'll repeat the examination and see what progress we've made. Pablo Gonzalez noticed the question in Violetta's eyes. Don't worry about the payment. Your situation qualifies for the quota. We had a reserve, and we've used it. So, you can stay at the clinic completely free of charge. Even for special procedures, there will be no charge. Violetta started crying again. So, why are you crying now? Everything is fine, the doctor was surprised. I don't know how to thank you. Maybe there's something I can do for you. Violetta, what's your profession? I'm a pastry chef. Really? Then, when Rafael gets better, I expect a delicious cake from you, agreed? Even 3. Are you trying to make me not fit in my chair or burst? Pablo smiled. No, of course not. A cake is such a small thing compared to what you're doing for us. Well, I wouldn't say so. A good cake is a work of art. Not every woman knows how to bake, and even fewer bake deliciously. Especially in modern times, Pablo leaned toward Violetta and whispered, "Can you bake pastries? With meat?" "Of course," Violetta laughed. "Then I'll expect a cake and lots of pastries from you. I love homemade pastries, but the last time I had the best ones was made by my grandmother. That was about 20 years ago, if not more." "Agreed," Violetta smiled, and they shook hands playfully. Pablo Gonzalez left. The 2 weeks dragged on unbearably long. Violetta found herself waiting for the miraculous doctor's return and missing him. She liked him. He was so attentive, caring, empathetic, and so unfortunate. To be practically an orphan with a living mother is something no one would wish for. Maybe that's why I liked him, Violetta thought, because he's as unfortunate as I am. Well, for different reasons, but the essence doesn't change. Though my situation isn't as bad as his. He is completely alone, with no one. I have a son, a father, a mother-in-law, and he has no one. It shouldn't be like that. A person should have loved ones. All this time, Violetta and Raphael were treated with special attention. She noticed it but didn't understand why. One day, she overheard a conversation between two nurses. One was telling the other that there was a special order from the manager regarding Violetta and Raphael. "I wonder why," Violetta thought. "Maybe we have some special case. And Raphael is a patient for a dissertation. That's why we're being so closely monitored." Although, in reality, she really hoped that the special attention was due to the doctor's sympathy for Violetta. She was afraid and didn't want to admit it to herself, but she really wanted the miraculous doctor to show his feelings for her. Violetta found it very hard to cope with all the emotions and worries related to Raphael's treatment, and she greatly needed male support. So she eagerly awaited his return from the business trip, while time dragged on treacherously. Finally, the 2 weeks passed, and Pablo Gonzalez returned. Violetta was so happy to see him in the corridor. She quickly returned to her room, fixed her hair, and touched up her lipstick. "God, what's happening?" she asked herself. "Why am I behaving like this? This is improper, after all." She felt embarrassed and quickly wiped off her lipstick. It was at that moment that the doctor entered the room. "Hello, Violetta, how are you?" he asked cheerfully and noticed the remnants of lipstick on Violetta's cheek. "Bad makeup?" Violetta blushed and turned away. She really didn't know what to say or how to explain her actions. She mumbled. "I thought, and then. I'm saying nonsense, sorry," and she ran to the bathroom. Pablo smiled. He realized that Violetta also liked him. During these 2 weeks, he thought about her every day. He called the clinic several times to inquire about Raphael's treatment process and whether there were any results. Fortunately, there were. He was drawn to this young, unfortunate woman by some invisible magnet. He wanted to embrace Violetta and protect her from all possible troubles, heal her son first and foremost, and stay with her forever. No woman had ever stirred such emotions in him before. He had had relationships, many of them, but the thought of marriage had never crossed his mind. At 38, Pablo remained a confirmed bachelor. And now this twist. Violetta came out of the bathroom. It was clear that she had calmed down and managed to pull herself together. "I'm sorry," Violetta said. "I don't know what came over me, but I feel really awkward. It all turned out so silly." "Why silly? Is it silly when a woman likes a man and a man likes a woman? I think it's completely natural and normal, or am I wrong?" "Yes, but," Violetta began to say, but Pablo interrupted her. "Violetta, let's stick with yes and leave out the but," he suggested. "Life is too short to focus on various buts, don't you agree?" "I completely agree with that. It's just not the right time now." "And when will it be the right time?" Pablo Gonzalez asked. "When Raphael is on the mend." "Agreed. Note that you said this, not me," he smiled conspiratorially, "and I have good news for you. Despite my absence from the clinic, I kept track of Raphael's treatment. So, there is progress, and it's positive. Really? Violetta couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're not lying to me? Now that's a bit hurtful, Pablo said, feigning offense. I'm a doctor. Why would I lie to you? It's unethical, after all. I'm sorry, Violetta said, frightened. I just can't believe it. We had very discouraging forecasts. The doctor said that Raphael showed all the signs of being predisposed to epilepsy. For me, this illness is a terrible diagnosis. There was a girl in my class, and I once witnessed an epileptic seizure. I still remember it. I understand, but that's no reason to hurt good people, and he gave her a conciliatory smile. So what now? Continue the treatment. The course is for 30 days. After that, there will be a follow-up examination. The interim results are good, but we need the final results, and it's very important to consolidate the progress we've made. We will do everything you say, Violetta promised. That's right. On weekends, you will have a one-day break between procedures. I invite you and Raphael to my place for a barbecue. It will be good for the boy to spend some time outdoors. And you could use a break and some relaxation. Are you in? I'm in. And I could really use a break. On Saturday, after lunch and the procedures, Pablo Gonzalez took Violetta and Raphael to his home. His house was small but very cozy. Violetta really liked the area where the house was located. There was a forest nearby, a small lake. It was very beautiful, and the air was incredible. You have a beautiful house, and the nature here is magnificent. It's just mesmerizing, Violetta said. Thank you, I'm very pleased. I'm glad you like it. I dream of building a summer house in the near future, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I still have a summer house from my father. It's an amazing place. But the house is tiny and almost destroyed. My father built it when my mother still lived with us. I see. Do you want to restore it and keep it as a memory? Yes, something like that. It's strange that my mother hasn't tried to take that summer house from me yet. She took everything else she could, Pablo said sadly. Violetta looked at the doctor sympathetically but said nothing. What could you say when someone has had such bad luck with their parent? From that day on, Violetta and Pablo began to grow closer. They developed a relationship. By the end of all the procedures and Raphael's examination results, Raphael showed very good progress. Pablo suggested that Violetta stay with him and have Raphael checked again in a month. Violetta had no objections. By that time, Violetta had already told her father about Pablo and their relationship. Her father was very happy for his daughter. But Violetta didn't know how to tell Sandra Blanco. She sincerely didn't want to hurt her mother-in-law, but she also couldn't keep silent. Her father came to the rescue. Violetta, let me talk to Sandra. We're adults, we'll figure it out. Dad, I don't want to burden you with my problems. Don't make things up. You're not burdening me. I want to help you in any way I can. You've had so much on your plate lately. Okay, thank you so much. Call me later and let me know how it goes, Violetta asked. Of course, I will. Give Raphael a kiss from me, her father said goodbye and hung up. In the evening, while having dinner, Violetta's phone rang. It was Sandra Blanco. Violetta even flinched when she saw who was calling. Pablo noticed this. What's wrong? Mother-in-law? He asked. Yes, I'm afraid to talk to her, Violetta admitted. I feel like a traitor. I think she should understand you. You said she's a wise woman. Yes, she is a wise woman, but she's his mother, and I think she might be hurt by this. You just need to pick up the phone and talk. If she's really a wise woman, she'll be happy for you, not upset, Pablo suggested. Yes, Violetta said, either to Pablo or already to Sandra on the phone. Good evening, Sandra Blanco. Hello, Violetta. Sandra's voice was normal. She wasn't angry, and that calmed Violetta a bit. How are you? Any news? There was an obvious subtext in the question. Violetta understood it immediately but didn't know how to start or what to say. You know, we have clear progress. I'm so glad there's a prospect, Violetta confessed honestly and fell silent. What is Raphael doing? Are you still in the hospital? Sandra was waiting for information from Violetta. Sandra Blanco, I'll be honest with you, Violetta began, we've always had a good relationship. I would never change my attitude toward you, no matter what you say now. The thing is, the doctor who's saving Raphael has charmed me a lot, and we've started dating. Actually, we've moved to his country house. I understand that you might not like it and it might upset you, but I've just lost my head. Please, don't be angry or offended with me, Violetta finished and exhaled. My dear girl, I am very, very happy for you. I prayed to God to send you a good person so that you would be happy. I would never dare to be offended by that. You've been through so much and deserve happiness. So don't worry. I will always be your friend. Besides, Raphael needs a father. A good, kind, caring one. Without a father, the boy will never become a real man. Tears streamed down Violetta's face. She felt the sincerity in her mother-in-law's words. She was ashamed that she had misjudged Sandra Blanco and thought she might be angry or offended. Thank you. You are not just my fiancé's mother and my son's grandmother. You are a true friend, ready to support me in difficult times. I promise you, despite the new relationship, we will visit you and would be happy to have you as our guest. Dima is a good person and will definitely not mind, I know. They talked a little more and said goodbye. Violetta felt a weight lift off her shoulders after the conversation. She was most worried about her mother-in-law's reaction. A year passed. Violetta and Pablo got married. At the wedding, both Violetta's father and Sandra Blanco were present. Raphael's health had stabilized. The progress was evident, and Pablo was almost as happy as his wife. The happy couple was expecting a new addition to the family. Violetta was already in her 6th month of pregnancy. Pablo had indeed built the summer house. They often went there for weekends, even though they lived outside the city. For Pablo, it was not just a summer house, but a bright childhood memory associated with his dearest person, his father. One evening, when Raphael was already asleep and Violetta and Pablo were sitting on the veranda drinking coffee, someone knocked loudly on the gate. Violetta even flinched from the surprise. Pablo looked at the clock. It was 10:30. A bit late for a casual visit. Something must have happened, he thought, and went to the gate, opened it, and was stunned. His mother was standing there. What do you want? Pablo asked immediately. Hello, my son, she said, and, pushing him aside, briskly walked onto the property and confidently headed towards the house. Violetta approached the steps leading to the house and stopped. She didn't understand what was happening or who this woman was. Hello, she greeted politely, please come in and join us at the table. She'll only be here for a short while and will leave soon, Pablo said loudly, and Violetta realized that the guest was clearly not welcome. Violetta looked at her husband in surprise. She had never seen him so rude. Who is this woman? What does she want, and why is Pablo so angry? Violetta wondered. Who are you? The uninvited guest asked rather rudely. I? Violetta was surprised. I'm Pablo's wife. And you? I'm his mother. Didn't he tell you he has a mother? Violetta opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but the current mother-in-law clearly lacked tact, patience, and manners. So, without looking at her daughter-in-law, she continued. Pablo, did you finish the summer house? She more stated than asked. Yes, why? Pablo asked. Violetta could see that her husband was barely keeping his temper. Bring me the keys, demanded the mother. Excuse me, what? The son couldn't believe such audacity. I said, bring me the keys quickly, I will be living there, the mother blurted out without any shame. Are you confusing something? Pablo continued to fume. No, I have as much right to this summer house as you do. Besides, I have a special situation. I sold my house and gave the money to my daughter. She and her husband are starting a business and need the money. I can't refuse my daughter, so I intend to live in the summer house. I can't live on the street, after all. She ignored Violetta's surprised face and Pablo's furious one. It seemed she was completely indifferent to what they thought or wanted to say. She needed the keys to the summer house, and that's why she had come. Pablo was barely containing himself. He clenched his fists and was searching for words. But, to his great surprise, it was Violetta who spoke first. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I didn't have the honor of meeting you since you weren't at our wedding with Pablo, Violetta began. My name is Natalia Martin, the mother-in-law interrupted her daughter-in-law and looked at her with interest. Wonderful, Natalia Martin. So, if you'll allow me, I'll continue. I don't know who you are or why you're here. My beloved husband only talked about his father, who loved and raised him. He raised him himself because his irresponsible wife and biological mother ran off with some man. Violetta saw the astonished mother-in-law wanting to say something and didn't let her. I'll finish. According to my beloved husband, he doesn't know or remember this woman. He said that this woman had another child, a half-sister, and dedicated all her time to her, never even remembering her own son's birthday. I'm sure that this woman has no right, either moral or legal, to claim anything. She should gather her things and go to the one for whom she lived and gave her money, time, love, and attention, etc. Surely her daughter has a place to live. And since she decided to become a businesswoman, she should let her mother live with her. But no one, besides our family, will live in our summer house. Not temporarily, not permanently. I hope I've explained myself clearly, or do I need to explain it differently? The mother-in-law looked at her daughter-in-law with hateful eyes. And who are you to tell me where to live? You've been here no time at all, and I gave birth to him. I know many women who gave birth and abandoned their children. I know women who raised other people's children as their own. A woman who bore and gave birth to a child and then abandoned him, never thinking of him for many years, has no right to be called a mother by definition. She is a cuckoo, not a mother. And you better leave here once and for all. Violetta pointed toward the gate. The exit is where the entrance is. The mother-in-law looked at her son. And you'll let your wife throw your own mother out the door? Natalia Martin asked angrily, addressing Pablo. My own mother? Who is that? Pablo clarified. Isn't she the woman who should be with her child at the most important moment of his life? I didn't have such a woman. I had a loving, caring father, whose death was a real tragedy for me. But when I called my mother, I didn't hear anything good from her. So, end this comedy and leave. You're not welcome here. And you never will be. Go to your daughter, who is more important to you than anyone. Natalia Martin grabbed the suitcase she had been barely carrying and walked towards the gate. Pablo and Violetta watched her leave. They remained silent for another 5 minutes. Violetta needed to process what she had just done. And Pablo needed to recover from the shock, first from his mother's visit, then from his wife's actions. Wow, I didn't expect you could speak like that. You really put her in her place. I didn't think you were like this. I thought you were soft and calm, but you've got a tough character. When it comes to my family, I can be different. Actually, I've just learned that about myself. Violetta smiled and looked at her husband. Until this evening, I hadn't had such feats to my name. My heart is pounding with emotions. You pleasantly surprised me, Pablo admitted, but my mother surprised me even more. What kind of audacity does it take to show up after all this time and demand, not ask, but demand the keys to the summer house? I'm in shock. I understand you. There's plenty to be shocked about. I didn't even immediately understand who that woman was. Well, I think she won't come back now. You put her in her place well. Violetta and Pablo went inside the house. That night, Pablo couldn't fall asleep for a long time. He was deeply affected by his mother's unexpected visit and Violetta's actions. Pablo thought that waiting all these years for his one true love had been worth it. With such a wife, he felt he could overcome anything, and most importantly, he felt loved. Truly, with all his heart. Both Violetta and little Rafael loved him. And soon, they would have a daughter, making their happiness complete. With these thoughts, Pablo finally fell asleep.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.